Good evening, everybody. Sherman D. Manning. I'm the proud pastor of Yes We Can Worship Center, joining you live from Los Angeles, California. Yes We Can Worship Center is located at 5855 South Central Avenue, Suite 180. Tell it everywhere you go. We want people to know and to go to Yes We Can Worship Center every Friday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Tell it. Y'all want to talk politics? About that. Politics. Because I know a lot of my listeners don't like God. You think I'm being sarcastic? I'm not. Slightly facetious, I am. But I'm being honest. I look at the numbers. I'm a numbers man. That's one thing I learned from Tim Russert of Meet the Press. Before he died, he always was a numbers man. He looked at the numbers. Tim Russert told me that Senator Barack Obama was going to become president before I even believed it. Because Tim Russert looked at the numbers. And he studied the numbers. You are on the fastest route. Like a mathematician. You should reach your destination by 9:26 p.m. Quite frankly, if black people were to learn how to study the numbers, if Hispanic people were to learn to study numbers, if poor white people and Asians and others were to learn to study the numbers, we would come up. We would transform our entire communities. See, when you study numbers, numbers are not about emotionalism. They're not about how you feel. And see, we got all of that cornered and mastered. And I know, this is still political, you all. I'm not talking about God for those of you who don't like him. I love him with all my heart. And you ain't going to change that. But I said this would be political, so let's be political. But let's go sociological for a moment. These are the kinds of things I discuss in some of my books, like The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. And my book, Kids Killing Kids, Creating Monsters, my book, American Dream, A Search for Justice, etc. If you go to Amazon.com, you will see those books. But minorities have mastered and sort of cornered the market on emotionalism. And I got no problem with emotionalism. I'm a black Baptist preacher. And so anytime you hear me preach, there's going to be some emotionalism in that message. Now, I try not to be typical. I try not to be just a hooping, hollering, haven't said anything type preacher. I don't want to pastor an ignorant church. Paul said, brethren, turn right onto South Olive Street. I would that you not be ignorant. I would not have you be ignorant. He said, study yourselves. Study to show yourselves approved of God. So you have to study. And so I study. And you don't have to be an expert in theology. You don't have to be a master with homiletics and hermeneutics and things of that nature just in order to study and have a good Bible-based message that is contemporary enough for people to relate to, that is spiritual enough for people to be convicted by. So I like to be, I like to, I don't want to be ignorant. But emotionalism is always going to be a part of my culture. And it's in the Hispanic community. And nowadays, many of our white brothers and sisters are emotional in that and animated, I should say, in their church services. But so I don't think we need any help in the emotionalism department. I think we need help in the numbers department. And so this is what Tim Russert did. He studied numbers. And through the study of those numbers, he was able to determine that Senator Barack Obama would be the next president of the United States of America before many of us believed it was possible. Because again, back to that word, we were operating out of our emotions, and we were operating sociologically, if you will, thinking, well, we ain't never had one, and I don't know about these white people, but he was looking at the numbers. And so when I look at the numbers statistically, I get far more listeners when I have political discussions than I do when I have God-based discussions. And so that does not mean that I'm going to abandon God. That will never happen, baby girl. That'll never happen, baby boy. Under no circumstances will that happen. But it does mean that for the few weeks I have left on this podcast, if I want to reach a broader range of people, then I need to do the podcast for what it was initially intended to be, which was a political podcast. And it doesn't mean I have to limit my God talk to church only. I talk about God all day long on the streets with people that I minister to. Because I minister, real ministry to people who are hurting on the streets and in the hospital rooms. And I go, to different areas where I know there's homeless people, etc. People who never get preached to because they ain't got no money. And I'm not being crucial of my brethren in the ministry, but there are many pastors who would never go to a homeless guy and minister to him because that homeless guy cannot pay tithes, okay? That homeless guy cannot give a love offering. That homeless guy can't contribute to my new Jag or my new Mercedes or my new Vet. And so I ain't got no time for him. I forgot what Jesus said. I was hungry and you fed me not. I'm sorry, I'm going religious again. Not religious. I'm not even religious. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But anyway. So my point is I talk about God all the time. So I have no problem coming to a podcast and trying to be disciplined enough to keep the subject on your Russian president, Donald, because that is what he is. He is a Russian-made president. The KGB, the former KGB, put him in office in some sense and on some levels, and he will never live it down. And I want you all to send letters to the White House, send emails to the White House, get the phone number to the White House. I'm going to get it. I have it somewhere, but I'm going to get it and start putting it out there. I want people to, first of all, I'd like for people to bombard the White House with calls asking to speak to the Russian American president, Donald Trump. Now, you won't speak to him, that's for sure. But you'll make a point while simultaneously irritating the hell out of the White House staff. I want people to start calling the White House daily, asking for the Russian American president, Donald, you know who he is. Do it. And send letters to the White House. Snail mail. I still like the sight of carts and crates full of mail going into the White House. That will never be read, but, it's good for show anyway. Write letters. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., 20505 or 20515. You can put 205 anything, it'll get to the White House. I have used both 20505 as well as 20515. Which one is exactly right, I'm not even sure, but I know, they work. But address it to Russian American President Donald Trump. Okay? Russia meddled in our elections. And these Republican brethren and sisters who are normally so patriotic, let them tell it. And back to religion again. As I told you, I'm not religious. I'm saved. I have a relationship with Christ. But it always fascinates me how most Republicans call themselves religious. They're Bible-thumping, let them tell it, God-loving, red-blooded Americans and all that other stuff. Cut your head off in a minute. Won't feed the hungry, won't clothe the naked, won't visit those who are in prison, but they've been, they go to church every Sunday. So that's a horse of a different color, and that's a whole other discussion that we won't have tonight. But it fascinates me how the Republicans who are normally so patriotic with their lip service, God and country and all that other stuff, have gone soft on patriotism now. Because how dare John McCain sit back? How dare Lindsey Graham? How dare Paul Ryan? How dare John Boehner? Boehner's the one that retired. Y'all forgot all about John Boehner, didn't you? Former Speaker of the House, former Weeper-in-Chief, Weeper of the House, John Boehner. But how dare these Republicans who are so patriotic, Ted Cruz and all those ultra right-wing conservatives, how dare they go soft on patriotism? Sit back knowing that Russia meddled in our elections and they're okay with it and they're silent. All that it takes for evil to rage is for good men to remain silent.
How dare they be silent in the face of this kind of injustice, in the face of this kind of disrespect, in the face of this kind of mess. Russia meddled in the election of a superpower, and we're okay with it. I'm not okay with it. This is not okay. This should not be. This must not be allowed to stand. Do you all hear me? Something must be done. Does Donald really have the testicular fortitude that he claims to have? Translation, does he really have the balls that he claims that he has?
If he does, what is he waiting on? Punish Putin, sanction Russia for what they did. But he has an interesting conundrum. On the one hand, he knows they meddle. On the other hand, he feels like if he punishes them, it'll delegitimize his presidency. Not wise enough to understand that it will probably re-legitimize his presidency if he stood up and did the things that commanders-in-chief do when we have a meddling in our election. When someone dares to have the audacity to mess with the free world.
But I must repeat, you all elected this guy. Yes, you did. I didn't elect him. You all elected this clown, this narcissistic Looney Tune. He's your president. You elected him. You get what your hand calls for. Be careful what you wish for. Those of you who were crazy enough to vote for him, and then those of you who sat at home and sat it out and decided not to go vote, you elected him. Y'all feel me? You elected this clown. And so one of the reasons I have such a strong faith in God is because I know that there but for the grace of God go this country. This country could go up in flames tomorrow were it not for the grace and the mercy of Almighty God. So those of you who don't like me talking about God, you better get over it. You better get down and start talking to God yourself, unless you want a nuclear war. You would really want to go to war with North Korea? Do I think we will beat them? Of course I do. I think we will turn their nation into a parking lot. But the lives that we will lose in the process, and the destabilization of the world that would take place as a result of a war between, and see, I'm not so cavalier about war like some people are. And I know there are people who have vested interest in wars, such as Donald. They got friends that own the companies that are defense contractors who become billionaires in wars. They got companies that make bullets. They got companies that makes bulletproof vests. They got companies that make helmets. They got companies that make uniforms for soldiers who get rich off of war. They need them a war so that they can make some money. But I'm not cavalier about war, because I always say to myself, okay, now we attack North Korea preemptively or get drawn into a conflict with them. What happens if Russia decides to attack us while we're in a conflict with North Korea? We're spread too thin. What happens if another country? Use the second from the right lane to take the exit towards San Bernardino. So I'm not cavalier and casual about war. I don't like war. I think war